Hello and welcome to another session of the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi dated 30th October 2025. Here we have taken up some important news articles that have featured in The Hindu and Indian Express newspaper and segregated our discussion into two parts, that is analysis and simplified. In analysis section, we will be covering the first topic, that is India's future flows through her shores, where Prime Minister Modi has attended a maritime conclave and launched initiative worth rupees 2.2 lakh crore. Second topic that we are going to cover is related to India-Myanmar relation, where an Indian delegation in United Nations General Assembly has criticized a biased report which is highlighting India's position in a negative light vis-a-vis the Rohingyas refugees. The topic for simplified section are listed below and are important from the perspective of UPSC examination, both prelims and mains. So the first topic of today's session is related to Indian maritime sector, that is port-led industrialization. Here Prime Minister Modi attended a maritime seminar or conclave where he announced initiative worth rupees 2.2 lakh crore for the shipping and shipbuilding sector. He also highlighted several achievements which we will see in the subsequent slide, and while talking on these terms, he also highlighted that India is going to invest heavily in the port sector with an eye on port-led growth model in the country. Now, why we have taken up this topic? Because it is important from GS paper 3 perspective, that is infrastructure, and also the policy intervention by government in various sectors in GS paper 2. So what he highlighted the most, he highlighted the achievements of India in the last decade, that is from 2014 and 2024. So mainly he said that there was a 700% increase in the inland waterway cargo, which is a huge number. Plus there is 118% growth in the coastal shipping also. Additionally, some 40 lakh passengers are now preferring the inland waterways and coastal waterways for their travel. So in effect, they are decongesting the road and railway transport. Further, Indian ports are ranking among the top ports of the world, like 9 Indian ports featured in the world top 100 list, while Vizag port featured in the top 20 list, which reflects upon the prowess and the positive growth in this direction. Further, Indian ports are now outperforming many advanced maritime nations, thus again moving in the right direction to achieve the targets of the blue economy. Now, before moving any further, that port-led industrialization, we should be focusing on what is the status, what is the volume that they are handling, and for which we need to understand the present status of the Indian maritime sector. And here you can see through various infographics that how it is growing day by day. So in 2024 and 25 itself, it witnessed a rise of around 4.2 to 4.3% in aggregate cargo handling. So if you will see the infographic, you will find that in financial year 2025, it handled around 855 metric ton of the cargo, while in 2024, it handled around 819 MMT. While another important thing is the capacity. Capacity is almost double of this handling. The capacity has increased or raised to around 1,630 metric ton per year. So this is the first point that you should be focusing on, that while capacity is around 1,600 metric ton, we are only handling around 855 metric ton. So there are some issues which we will cover. Now, another important feature is that in all our learning or the focus area, we always hear about the major ports, which are designated by the government. But recent trends have shown that non-major ports are keeping the pace with the major ports with volume market share of around 46%. So they are catching up with the major port, which is again a good sign because many private players have come in this field. Next thing is The connectivity. The Sagarmala project, it has been highlighted that more than 318 projects have been initiated and investment of around 2 lakh rupees is already in pipeline. And I have already talked about the installed capacity, which you can see here. It is around 1630 million ton per annum, which is almost double, if you can see, from the 800 million ton of 2014. So this is the present status, which clearly highlights the growth of the maritime sector, growth of the port-led growth, and growing focus of government towards the ports in India. Now, why it is important? Why we are focusing too much upon the port-led growth or the ports in India? It has multifaceted benefits. First is the competitiveness. Now you know that the transportation cost or logistical cost, which we call, in India is much higher than the global average. It ranges in and around 13 to 14% of the GDP, while if you will see the developed countries, it is around 8% of the GDP. So almost you can say double. And this, the coastal shipping, inland waterways, and the port, the maritime sector, it provides an option, an alternative of low cost logistics, which will reduce the cost of logistic, as well as it is environment friendly also. So that is how it will bring economic competitiveness. You are going to save 8 to 10, 8, like 7 to 8% of your GDP if you will adopt to this mode also. Second is the strategic and geopolitical. Now just recall the location, geographical location of India, central to the Indian Ocean region. So strengthening the maritime sector will give India an edge over strategic and geopolitical games. Like, it will strengthen India's role in Indo-Pacific. Secondly, it will support initiative like security and growth for all in the region, which is an initiative in the Indian Ocean region. Thirdly, while China is very aggressive in their projects of maritime projects in and around India, which we often, it creates a concern for India that it is encircling India. It is not just about the security concern, but it is also snatching away the business from India, the you can say the money from India or the prospect from India to become a major player in the global supply line. So it is going to give, strengthening your maritime sector is going to give you an strategic and geopolitical edge also. Further, regional development. Now, what happens, what has been the history in India, that growth pole model, when we have decided to concentrate some industries in some sector, we were having that idea that this industry is going to have a trickle down effect. It will have a trickle down effect where the areas in and around will also be benefited from the business that particular growth pole will bring in. However, in case of port, the story is same as is the case with other sectors. The port-led growth is concentrated just in and around that particular city or location. It is not having the trickle-down effect into the adjoining area, or you can say some distant areas. So once you will promote the coastal shipping, once you will promote the inland waterways, once you will promote, once you will create the connectivity with the ports, it is going to create industrial corridors. And in these corridors, development will be spread out, will be spreading out, benefiting most of the population in and around these particular locations. Next is the diversification. So again, as we have discussed that already discussed that around 40 lakh plus passengers are opting for the coastal shipping and inland waterways, it is going to decongest the already burdened the road and rail sector. So it will give an option for diversification. You will not be dependent on one particular sector. So if there is a bottleneck, if there is an unforeseen calamity hitting one form of transportation, you have an alternative. So it will provide a diversification. Next is energy security. Now you know that India is heavily dependent on crude oils and other mineral products, and mostly sea routes, sea lanes of transportation are they play a vital role in delivering India its needs, secure energy needs. So strengthening your maritime sector will strengthen your energy security. Lastly, your aim of blue economy growth, blue GDP, is going to be realized only when you have a strong maritime sector, including inland waterways, coastal waterways, and the international waterways. So it is going to support fisheries, you are going to invest in shipbuilding, you are going to produce, you are going to create jobs, you are going to invest into the offshore renewable energy resources or projects, you are going to deliver marine services and coastal tourism, all in all contributing to the blue GDP. Now this is the significance. Then why we are concerned about this? Why PM is saying we are going to invest more? Because obvious reason is that in last decade we have seen good results, encouraging results. But there are some challenges pertaining to this sector, because if you will see around, if you will just recall things around you, not many of us has opted for, apart from those living in the coastal areas, not many of us have used the sea lanes of communication or the coastal shipping routes or the inland waterways. Why? Because the mix of the mode, the waterways mode, is very low. It is a very recent phenomena where we have focused, we talked about it of lately, like 20-30 years, but the major thrust, the major focus it gained only in last 15-20 years. Okay, so there are some challenges also. Now first is the drought limitation and transshipment dependency. Now what is drought? Drought is the minimum depth which is required to berth a container ship. Minimum depth. Now in India, if you will talk about the western coast, which is a submergent coast, so you will find a natural drought. But the eastern coast, which is an emergent coast, the depth is very low. In general, average, it lies in the range of 12 to 14 meter. While if you will compare it with some developed and major port cities like Singapore, Colombo, you will find that this drought is 14 to 20 meter. So more depth, more bigger cargo ships can berth at your shipyards or the ports. More consignment you can bring in, more consignment you can send with a single ship. So this is the first limitation, the lower drought, the lower depth at the Indian ports. Now what it results into, that apart from new Vizhinjam port, there is no transshipment port in India. Most of the transshipment from India is being done through Colombo and Singapore. Okay, because they have a large draught and larger handling capacity. So what is transshipment? You are taking your product material from one port, smaller port, and you are kind of unloading and reloading on a bigger vessel on a transshipment port. So most of the transshipment in and around Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia are being handled by major ports of Colombo and Singapore, taking business away from India because of this problem of drought limitation. Second is, we already talked about modal mix. So three major model, basically for air, rail, road and water. Now, it is heavily skewed towards the road transportation. Around 71% of the share goes to road transport. Next is rail, around 18%. With inland waterway, coastal waterway and international waterway, the maritime sector only constitute around 6%. That is another challenge. And that is why you and me and many of us are not aware of this, and it is not being the preferred way of transportation or communication, despite having the lowest cost and lowest footprint on the climate. This is being not used. Third is the last mile connectivity. Now you have just learned that Sagarmala project is focusing on connectivity. So your product came to the port, but what about evacuating that stuff, evacuating that product to the factories, to the manufacturing unit? You don't have road connectivity, you don't have rail connectivity, and this creates a bottleneck. And despite Sagarmala project, there have been instances, and this has been highlighted by the Ministry of Shipping itself, that evacuation bottleneck is still a problem. And that is why more money is in pipeline, and Sagarmala 2 is proposed now. So this bottleneck creates two-way problem. First, material from hinterland to the port, there is a problem, congestion, and from port to the hinterland, again a problem, again making it inefficient. Next issue is the regulatory challenges, regulatory transition. Now we know that recently, in order to reform this sector, government came up with the Major Port Authorities Act 2021, replacing an act of 1963. Now this is a well-intended and very, you can say, much needed step that has been taken by the government. But problem is the transition. There is, so first let us understand what this act brought in. First thing, that this act aims to create authorities, autonomous authorities on the lines of corporate authorities. So you will give autonomy to a port authority. They can decide tariff, they can decide regulation, everything they can decide. You will give autonomy to them. Okay, so kind of landlord model. So you are going to operate as per your needs and demands. But problem is, this transition created a confusion. Confusion like, for example, what will be the tariff and what will be the arrangement with the PPPs, the public-private partnership, that have already been made before coming of this act. And such problems, such confusions have created some kind of bottlenecks and have slowed down the process. Again, government is trying its best, and this is more related to a time related thing, which is going to be sorted after some time. Once the clarity will come in, the process will streamline. But yes, as of now, this is a problem. The transition is problem, confusion is problem. Next is the dredging constraint. Now dredging means, because all the rivers, all the ports, they face sedimentation with time. So the depth, the draught depth reduces, and you need to have dredging to maintain the required depth. Now it requires huge capital. Okay, plus it also overlaps with the environmental concern. So you need clearance also. And if you will consider inland waterways and coastal waterways, the capital is nowhere when compared to ports. Plus, the environmental clearance itself becomes a matter of contention, and it delays the project. Lastly, the technical issues in inland waterways, the capital and inland. So if we will talk about the port, investment in port, you have big players, big companies. But for inland waterways, the capital is not present. At present, apart from government, there is no mechanism to have such a huge amount of capital, because Indian rivers are seasonal. So you need to maintain that particular depth. You need to maintain that particular flow, which is conducive for your waterway to run properly throughout the year. But you need huge capital for that, which is missing. Second, the technical expertise, know-how is also missing. Plus, several layers of, you can say, authorities, central authorities, state authorities, then environmental authorities, they create a complex package and delay things even more. Now here in this map, major ports have been highlighted. One thing to note that Port Blair is no more a major port. It has been removed from the list in the 2017. In place of this, the new constituted Vadhavan port in Maharashtra is going to be the latest major port of India, and once being operationalized, it is going to be the biggest container port in India also. Having seen the challenges, let us move into the government initiative, what government is doing. So we have already seen the Sagarmala program, then Major Port Authorities Act, Unnati project. Unnati is again focusing on bringing efficiency in the operations of the ports. Then government has brought in dredging guidelines and SOP since 2021, but these are not being followed as per the intention. Then PM Gati Shakti to synchronize the, you can say, the procedures of different ministries and different authorities. And there are incentives and 100% FDI for PPP and private investment. All in all, to achieve the Maritime India vision of 2030 and to transform India into global transportation hub. Now, what is required? Here is the Sagarmala 2 overview where other initiatives are being started. What is required as of now? First is the expedition of the dredging landscape, because the dredging landscape is marred with the monopoly of Dredging Corporation of India and some private players. So you need to open this up. You need to bring in more private players so that better technology can come in, better efficiency can come in, and better competition would be there. Second thing is, you need to expedite the last mile connectivity, the Sagarmala project and the hurdles therein, various ministry, rail ministry, port ministry, road ministry. So whenever there are multiple ministry, there is a problem. You need to streamline and expedite these projects on priority basis. Thirdly, promotion of coastal shipping and inland waterways. You need to provide incentives. You need to provide some incentives in line of Udan scheme. You need to provide some mechanism for their tariff regulation. You need to provide some mechanism for the capital investment. Further, you need to strengthen the port governance so that they have this autonomy, and this confusion in transition should be removed. Next is to reduce the time lag, to reduce the delay, the turnaround time. The paperwork should be eliminated and digitalization should be promoted, because most of the time the biggest hurdle in Indian shipping industry is the turnaround time, which is again very high when compared to some of the major ports of the world. Then ensuring capital and year-round navigation in inland waterway is again a pretty much important thing and most vital thing, so that users can trust and users can consider it as a viable alternative for the road and rail transportation. Now here is the mains practice question, which reads as: port-led growth model holds immense potential for India, but not without challenges. You have to examine the statement. This is a 15-mark question, 250 words. Try to attempt it. So the next news article is based on UN report on Myanmar, which India rejected by terming it blinkered and biased. So in this report, the observer had highlighted that after the Pahalgam attack, there were negative emotions and negative outcome for the Rohingya refugees in India. India expelled many of the Rohingya refugees, and the general masses had some kind of negative emotion toward them. Now, Indian delegation in UNGA thoroughly rejected this report, calling it biased and not well researched. And India again reiterated its stand that any solution to Myanmar should come from within the Myanmar and should be Myanmar led and Myanmar owned. Why we have taken up this topic? Because of the GS paper 2, India and its neighborhood relation. So in this discussion, we will be quickly looking into the background, why the situation in Myanmar is what we are seeing today or what we are observing today. Plus, we are going to look into the challenges and opportunities for India with a brief way forward. So, let us begin our discussion with the background. What happened in Myanmar exactly? Now, Myanmar is a multi-ethnic country with government recognizing more than 135 different ethnic group in the Myanmar. Now, first problem is this, that various ethnic groups are fighting. Now, religiously, it is Buddhist dominated country. Apart from Buddhist, Christians are there and Muslims are also there with a very small populations of Hindus. So it is a kind of mix of various, you can say, a melting pot of ethnic differentiation or ethnic diversity it is. Now it got independence in and around 1948, and in 1962 a major change came. The military gained the power, which we in the general parlance we call it military junta. So it gained the power and kind of captured the power for a good period till 1990, when the people raised the voice, different religious groups with different ethnic minorities, they started raising the voice for the democratic government. So the first election were held in 1990 and National League for Democracy won the election. Aung Suu Kyi, as you might be aware of this public figure, was the leader of this party. But military again rejected the mandate. Now, but military realized that people are demanding the democratic setup. So what happened? In 2008, they came up with a roadmap. Military came up with a roadmap. This election was null and void. There was no government. Still military junta was there. So another roadmap where they prohibited anyone to become president who has been imprisoned or has a partner who is of foreign origin. So in case of Suu Kyi, her husband is of British origin. So it is said that this rule is targeted towards her to keep her away from the power. It is alleged that. Now in 2015, again elections were held and again her party won the election. Now things changed. Now Suu Kyi came under huge criticism because at this particular time, the Myanmar army started, there were allegations that Myanmar army started persecuting the Rohingyas Muslims who were minority. And in response to the army version is that Rohingya Muslims have picked up arms and are indulged in armed rebellion, and they killed some of the security forces member, and in response army reacted in a brute force, in a brute manner. So the allegation on Suu Kyi were that she silently supported the action of army. But things changed again in 2020. The next election, again she won. But this time, army termed this election as fraudulent and rejected the election altogether. So you can say that again military coup happened in 2021. And since then, army is in the control of the country. But recent trend, because I have told you there are multiple ethnic groups which indulge in the armed rebellion, who indulge in armed rebellion. So practically, if you will see today, only 20 to 25% of Myanmar mainland is under control of army, rest is under control of various rebellion groups. Now, this situation creates a problem for India. I will discuss that later, but as of now, the civil war in Myanmar is between various rebellion group, various ethnic groups in Myanmar versus the army of Myanmar. Now, what is the significance of Myanmar for India? First is, you know that your northeastern state like Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, they all share border with India, around 1600 kilometer long land border you share with India shares with Myanmar. So, keeping this thing in mind, Myanmar acts as a geopolitical bridge. If you know that Myanmar is member of ASEAN as well as BIMSTEC. So it acts as a bridge for India to reach out to Southeast Asian countries. Second thing is the connectivity, regional connectivity. And that is why India has been investing heavily or trying to invest heavily in multimodal projects like Kaladan project and India-Myanmar-Thailand project. Both of these projects have been delayed. Just keep this thing in mind because the issue comes from this delay, and there is again a geopolitical angle behind these delays apart from some other reason. So it is vital for the regional connectivity also. It gives a gateway to India to Southeast Asian country. Apart from the sea route, it also provides a gateway in case of the road connectivity it provides through Myanmar. Next is the strategic significance. Now, you all know about the Chicken Neck, Siliguri corridor. So, Chicken Neck acts as a choke point for India. And in 1962 war with China, we have already seen that. Once that choke point is blocked due to some or the other reason, the access to Northeast India is blocked. So, Myanmar provides an alternative route for India to reach to the northeastern India. Next is the security imperatives. Now, here you need to focus that what are the security imperatives. Now, along all this 1600 kilometer border, the communities on both sides of border are same, like Chin community, Naga community, Mizo community. All these communities share familial ties. Okay, so there was a free movement regime also where you don't need to have a passport or visa to move on a daily basis because they have this age-old relation from across the border because they have familial ties across the border. Now, if one side is indulged in violence, one side is indulged in war with their army and government, obviously to escape the persecution, they are going to come to the Indian side. Secondly, both army and the rebellion group, they require money. And Myanmar lies at the Golden Triangle. Apart from the Golden Crescent, it is the second most important area vis-a-vis the drug trafficking. Earlier it was opium, but now it is meth, which is more profitable. And both army and these rebellion group are using the drug trafficking to earn money and to feed their fight. Now, again, if it is going on in your neighborhood, obviously it is going to come into your territory also. And it has been the history, the drug trafficking from Myanmar to India via Northeast was a matter of fact. So it has security imperative. Now, another issue is, another significance of Myanmar is the alignment with policy, mainly the Act East and Neighborhood First, where Myanmar lies at the center of both of these policies. So for Neighborhood First, India always want to have a strong relationship with its neighbor, plus the Act East policy, you can say the path to Act East policy goes through the Myanmar itself. That is why Myanmar is important for India, and any trouble in Myanmar is going to create a trouble for India. Now, what are these trouble? Before moving on to the challenges, to understand the challenges and why India need to walk a tightrope, you need to understand the challenges. Now, I have told you that around 20%, 20 to 25% area is under control of army, rest is with the rebellion group or the ethnic groups. Now, experts believe that these ethnic groups are getting support from none other than China. First, China is making inroad. Plus, China simultaneously is pursuing its infrastructural project in and around the Bay of Bengal and Myanmar. Okay, so it has created a gas pipeline from Myanmar to China. It is also working on a rail link to Yunnan province. It has also, Myanmar is also part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Plus allegation that China is feeding these rebellions so that its interest can be preserved. And as I told you, the Kaladan project and the IMT project, experts also believe that China is behind delay of these projects of India. So this is the first problem. Second problem is related to Rohingyas. Now, these are being persecuted by the army, fleeing the country, going to Bangladesh and also trying to come to India. Now, if India accepts them, it will make the government of Myanmar or the army of Myanmar unhappy. If India refutes to take them, then the human right violation. So there is a precarious situation. Now, as we discussed the drug trafficking and other issues, if your neighborhood is disturbed, you are bound to get disturbed. So keeping these things in your mind, just understand the challenges. The first is presence of Chinese. As I have told you that China is making inroad at the cost of India in its very neighborhood. So again, kind of encircling India with its own influence, and sphere of influence is increasing and coming to the borders of India. Next is the federal tussle. Now I have told you similar tribes are living on both sides of the border. Now just take case of Mizo. Now Chin community, while fighting, if you will see the location, Chin state, while fighting, their fighters to take refuge, they come to Mizoram. With the people of their own lineage or ethnicity. Now, Mizoram wants to give them refuge, but Government of India, the central government, refuses. Here comes the federal tussle between central government and state government, which again creates a problem of peace and tranquility in the region. Next is the insurgencies and security. Now, if you have a rebel group on both the side, there is a free flow of armaments, there is free flow of drugs, there is free flow of money. Definitely it is going to help the insurgency in the northeastern region, because the moment you will corner them, they will flee to Myanmar. The moment you will cut their supply, they will get a fresh supply. So again, problem of insurgency and security coupled with the drug trafficking. Okay, then comes the strategic balance. Now, as I told you in case of Rohingya, same is the case with other communities also. If you will give them shelter, the government is angry. If you will not, your state, your own population is angry. If you will not give shelter to refugees, human right violation is there. If you will give shelter to them, then your own population may create a problem, or the government in Myanmar will look at you in a bad light. So strategic balance has to be maintained, and that is why the tightrope has to be tread through. Next is Indian investment. Now I told you that India is having various interest in Myanmar with their infrastructural project and investment, bilateral ties, bilateral agreements, bilateral trade. So somewhere the Chinese presence and Chinese inroads are affecting them adversely. That need to be taken care of. And this gives a very good opportunity for India. As India said, that solution for Myanmar should be Myanmar led and Myanmar centered around Myanmar. Nobody else should interfere there. So it should be a Myanmar led process where India can play a very vital role. India can provide a middle ground for talks, peace talks and settlement. India can provide, because of the communities on its side of border, India can leverage that, and India can bring people from different factions on the table. With this, India can also pursue the government to go for the democratic process and to reinstate to again go for the elections, and should also be talking about the Suki and her deportation and arrest in the country. So these are the way forward for India, to not interfere but always ready and open to provide a common ground for peace talks. Now there is a question for your practice. The question reads as: the prolonged political instability in Myanmar poses both strategic challenges and opportunities for India. Discuss in light of India's Act East policy and its security concerns along the India-Myanmar border. This is a 15-marker question of 250 words. Try to attempt it. The next topic for today's session is the China's complaint against India at WTO. Now, China has a complaint against India regarding its PLI scheme, that is production linked incentive scheme, and mainly regarding three sectors, that is battery, electric vehicle and auto industry. So why we have taken up this topic? Because of the WTO and international trade with India and China, and the key highlights of this topic are as follows. So there are three specific PLI schemes that China has challenged. Now PLI scheme is focused on this production linked incentive. What does it mean? It aims to increase the production capacity of India in fields where there is a potential of export. So Indian government will incentivize these sectors, and these namely three sectors which were for which China has complained. One is advanced chemistry cell, that is battery sector. Second is advanced automotive technology. Third is EV manufacturing and EV manufacturing in India. Now, what is China's complaint? China is saying that these incentives, PLI incentives, are tied with the domestic value addition. What is domestic value addition? Domestic value addition is you are adding value to the GDP with domestic, that is local resources, labor and investment. So you are basically using local content. So China accuses India that it has tied the incentive with the need of, or the you can say condition of, using local products in the manufacturing. So it will impact China's export to India. So in those countries who are coming, or those manufacturers who are taking leverage of this scheme, will not be giving order, or will not be waiting, or will not be going for the Chinese imports, because they have to leverage this. So they need to use the local stuff. So they have given this data that in automotive sector, it should be 50% of domestic value added, while in the battery sector, it should be 25%. Okay, so simply that China is concerned about its export to India, and it is saying that if you are incentivizing local, then nobody will import my product. Now, what WTO law says? Is there any law? Answer is yes. These subsidies and countervailing measures, that is SCM, it deals with the industrial subsidy and regulates it. Now there are two major provisions. You have seen about green box, yellow box, amber box in agriculture. Similarly, in SCM agreement, there are three categories. One is prohibited, second is actionable, third is non-actionable. Now in prohibited category, there are two types of subsidies, that is export subsidy. So you are providing subsidy so that your export item becomes competitive. So either you are lowering the tariff or you are providing direct benefit in terms of incentivizing the manufacturer. So you are making the export competitive. Second is import substitution. So basically, import substitution is when you are incentivizing someone for manufacturing something which otherwise will be imported. So let's say you are manufacturing a product X, which if you will not manufacture is needed to be imported. So government will provide you subsidy for manufacturing of X. So this is the regulation, and this falls under the prohibited category because it clearly it clearly says that this is prohibited category. So thus, if a country promises a financial contribution to a specific industry on the condition that it use domestic goods or goods produced locally rather than imported, it would constitute a prohibited subsidy. Apart from this subsidies and countervailing measures, there are two other laws. First is General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, which talks about the national treatment. So once a product is in your border, it has entered in your economy, you will treat it as similar to your product only. This is first agreement. Second is the trade related investment measures, which specifically says that if local content requirement is there, okay, local content requirement is there, then it is prohibited. So again, the imports, you have just seen the import substitution subsidy, it gives preference to domestic over foreign good. It constitutes as a prescribed trim under the WTO law. So it is prohibited. So one is that subsidy and countervailing measures, and other is the trims. So already this is prohibited, but experts say that domestic value addition does not automatically mean that you need to have local content requirement, because you can apart from manufacturing, you can also contribute to the domestic value addition through other means. So this is a complicated issue. You cannot make it a generic statement that DVA requirement, domestic value addition requirement, simply means manufacturing with local content. You can invest in service delivery, you can invest in the research and development, then also you are contributing the domestic value, contributing towards domestic value. So experts say that this is a complicated issue. It is not that simple what the allegations of China are. Then already China has complained. So what will be the steps? The first step would be the consultation. So here two countries will sit together, will talk, their delegation will sit, will try to sort out things. If things will not sorted out, then WTO panel will be created. Now if this panel fails to reach to an agreement, then it will be referred to an appellate body, which is dysfunctional since 2019 due to non-appointment of the members. So in totality, this matter is going to remain the same. The status quo will be maintained because appellate body is not there. So dispute will remain dispute. Complaint will remain complaint if this appellate body is not constituted. From prelims point of view, WTO as an international organization established in 1995, objective to make and implement rules for global trading, headquartered in Geneva. Organizational structure is important, which includes the ministerial conference, the highest body. So minister of the countries, 164 members are there. They meet every second year, every 2 years they meet. They talk about the various policies and framework. Then comes the General Council, the major governing body, the highest governing body, acts as a representative of ministerial conference, and it meets more frequently, And basically 3 councils are there. One is trade in goods, one is trade in services, and another one is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. Then there is an office of director general, which day-to-day secretariat is being run by this director general, appointed by the ministerial conference for a 4-year tenure. Then this general council also act as a trade policy review body. So it meets, it reviews the trade policy. It also takes into consideration of the director general's reports. Apart from trade policy review body, general council also meets as a dispute settlement body. So the panel that you have learned in the newspaper, the panel will be created by this DSB only. And this DSB also creates the appellate body of 7 members with 4 years of tenure, which is dysfunctional since 2019. That brings us to the next news, which is Federalism and Funds. Now, last week, Kerala signed an MOU to join the PM Shri, that is Pradhan Mantri Schools for Rising India program. But yesterday, it is put on, the scheme has been put on hold for a review by a 7-member panel. So what is in the news? The thing is, there were 3 states, majorly West Bengal, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, who were opposing this PM Shri scheme because of the factor that the allegation is that they have tied up the Samagra Shiksha component of the funds to this. So if you will join this scheme, you will get the fund. If you will not, then you will not get the fund. So recently Tamil Nadu approached the Supreme Court when their funding were withheld by the central government. So the Kerala government, they immediately joined and they said that we need the fund of the Samagra Shiksha, and that's why we are joining. But the coalition, there was a fissure, and the coalition partners were not happy with this move and they decided to raise a protest, and due to which it has been referred to the panel. Now, according to the article, Kerala is already doing good. The best indices in healthcare and education sector is with Kerala. So there is no need of Kerala to join PM Shri because it is already doing well. It would be, they termed it as cosmetic rebranding. Further, they also say that it is regrettable that central government is tying the funding with the PM Shri scheme. So it is kind of arm twisting being alleged. Next is, the Tamil Nadu has, the author says that Tamil Nadu has already reached out to the Supreme Court, but it has not received the judicial urgency it needed. So all in all, this article is more about how these 2 schemes have been tied up and how it is disturbing the federal structure of the country. Now, from your perspective, the Pradhan Mantri School for Rising India scheme is important. It is aimed to create some model schools, exemplary examples on the lines of New Education Policy 2020, and around 14,500 schools will be selected on challenge mode. And the funding part, central sector scheme it is, so 60-40 would be the funding structure, 60% by the central government and 40 by the state. For Northeast region, it would be 90-10, and for UTs, it would be 100% centrally sponsored scheme. Focus area would be in line with, again, NEP objective, holistic and joyful learning, green and inclusive infrastructure, and more focus would be on experimental learning, critical thinking, and integration of technology. Further, a regular monitoring framework has been created through a school quality assessment framework, which will mark schools on different parameters, and based on this their monitoring will be done and they will be given suggestion and rewards based on their performances. Next news article is based on this article written by ex-Chief Election Commissioner of India, titled "This is Not Welfare," and talks about how different kind of freebies are being given in the name of the welfare. So he cited the example of Bihar election, where before election, the promises that have been made will require 8 lakh crore annually for Bihar alone. So he is saying that while welfare is a constitutional duty, freebies have become the norm. So in the name of welfare, governments are announcing something which cannot be termed as welfare measures, but it is more of a freebie, and which should not be done. So he cites the case of Bihar, and he says that welfarism has been weaponized into vote buying, and the public exchequer has become a private election fund. So he says that before, there are two phases of these freebies, where before model code of conduct comes into the light or comes into the action, several populist policies and schemes are announced. The second phase is interesting. After the announcement of MCC, now you will say after the announcement of MCC, you cannot make any process. That is correct. Here comes the role of RPA Act section 123. Now, if you will read this RPA 123(1) terms bribery as any gift, offer or promise by candidate or his agent. So as a candidate or his agent, you cannot announce any gift, offer or promise. Secondly, receipt of or agreement to receive any gratification. Okay, these two things are prohibited. But what about the election manifesto? It has been exempted. So correctly, in the case of Subramaniam Balaji versus Government of Tamil Nadu in 2013, Supreme Court says that manifesto promises do not amount to corrupt practices under section 123. It also says, though such promises shake the roots of free and fair elections. So what political parties are doing? After the MCC, after the model code of conduct comes into action, they will give an election manifesto or election manifesto, party manifesto. There they will announce freebies, that once I will get elected, I will give you this, this and this. So this is problematic. Now, moving further, it also highlights the RBI report, which says that such freebies will lead to fiscal collapse, as the case of Punjab, where the debt to GSDP ratio stood at around 47.2%, and Rajasthan, the debt is 56,000 crore. These states are not in a position to pay back their debt. Again, further article says not all announcements are bad, not all schemes are bad. He cites 2-3 examples like MG Narega or the cycle scheme of Nitish Kumar, Bihar government, where the school enrollment were raised for the girl student, and the N.T. Ramarao, Andhra Pradesh, where he fixed the price of rice at 2 rupees to battle the food scarcity. So there are some schemes which are good, but the populist scheme, subsidies for electricity, water, these things should not be there. Then he suggests something, few steps. First is that you need to provide a costed manifesto, that you need to tell that how would you manage these expenses, where the money will come from, whether it will come from new taxes, whether it will come from political funding, whatever it is, you need to provide a clear-cut data. Second is direct cash promises to specific voter groups should be made a bribery, an offense under RPA. Third is no new scheme designed to seduce the voter should be allowed within 6 months of election notification. Okay, and lastly, it says that it should come clean on the data, that how schemes will be funded, whether by new loans, new taxes, cuts, or whatever means. So costed manifesto backed up by the funding details. So these are the steps that Election Commissioner has suggested, that these steps should be taken. And lastly, he says that welfare linked to education, jobs and skill building should be incentivized over consumption subsidy. What we were talking about, water, electricity, such kind of subsidies should be removed. So here are some prelims pointer for the model code of conduct. As we know, these are the regulation provided by Election Commission for fair election for both parties and the candidate. And the objective is to keep it transparent, to avoid misuse, to prevent the electoral offense, and duration is once the election dates are announced by the Election Commission, it kicks in. The announcement of election date will bring MCC in action till the conclusion of election. Conclusion of election means the counting and declaration of result. And then it does not goes automatically. Election Commission announces, declare the completion of MCC. Now, it is not a statutory document, it is only guiding principle, so not enforceable, but some provisions of RPA Act can be invoked, some provisions only, but largely it is non-enforceable. Moving on to the next topic, that is India and China agree to maintain LAC stability, country new border mechanism. Now, Indian and Chinese officials met in a high-level military talk since last October, the disengagement, and they reiterated the resolve to maintain things as they were, and to for future talks, they have come to a point that existing mechanism are going to work for the future talks. So what are the existing mechanism, established mechanism? Majorly 1993, the Border Peace and Tranquility Agreement, BPTA, which talks about peaceful resolution, no threat of force, LAC should be respected, that is line of actual control, joint checks of different LAC perceptions. If you have different perception about LAC, you will jointly patrol them. Minimal force along LAC, and aim was to freeze status quo and improve ties. Now, moving further, in 1996, confidence building measures were also taken into account, the CBMs, in addition to the BPTA. So again, reiteration of no force, limited force, and large, and again, the most important thing which was added is restricted large scale exercise near border. Okay, and if you are conducting an exercise, it would be directed away from the border, not towards the border. Okay, so further, you will exchange maps of your perception. So this failed completely because both the countries, they exchanged map with a maximalist point of view. So both were claiming territory which is already part of the sovereign country. So this mechanism failed, this particular exchange of maps, but status quo was maintained, that least force, no exercise, all those things were maintained. In 2012, again, a working mechanism for consultation and coordination was created to improve the coordination and consultation among the officials of both the countries. From your perspective, what is important is the border of border between India and China, which is roughly 3,488 kilometer and has been segregated into three parts, that is western sector, central sector, and eastern sector. So the western sector and eastern sector are mostly turbulent. The central sector is mostly peaceful. Some contention is there on in and around Barahoti pasture in Uttarakhand Chamoli district. Otherwise, it is peaceful sector. So major contention comes in the western sector, where India agrees to Johnson Line and marks it as a border because it puts Aksai Chin within India, while China prefers and accepts McDonald Line, which places Aksai Chin with China. Obviously, more territory, so you will prefer that particular line. So India's preference is Johnson line, while China's preference is McDonald line. Now, in the eastern sector, India accepts McMahon line, which was accepted in the Shimla Convention, but China thoroughly rejects the McMahon line and says that it was not represented by officials, it was represented by Tibet, which has no authority to decide upon the border. So, in the eastern sector, McMahon line places Arunachal Pradesh as part of India, while China claims entire Arunachal Pradesh. So, in crux, in western sector, India claims Aksai Chin. In eastern sector, China claims Arunachal. So, these are the most critical points between India and China border tussle. Moving on further, the last article of today's session is related to this report, which highlighted some concerning outcome. And developing nations need 12 times more funds to fight climate crisis. Important from GS paper 3 environmental conservation perspective. And what does it highlight? First thing is that to adapt to climate change, developing countries will require anywhere between $310 to $365 billion, okay, annually by 2035. We are not talking about 10-year or 5-year term. We need $310 to $365 billion annually. This is nearly 12 times more than money that currently flows. And what currently flows? It flows in 2023, it was about 26 billion. And in 2022, it was about 22 billion. So where there is a need of raising the funding, there is decline in funding. So in 22, 28, in 23, 26 billion, 2 billion less. And with this pace, we are not going to achieve what we have set a target in COP26 in Glasgow, which was 40 billion. Because 2025 is here, and we are going to meet in the 38th COP in Belém, Brazil, and back in COP26 Glasgow summit, we decided to create a 40 billion corpus, and we are only contributing 25 to 23 billion. So we are not going to achieve the 40 billion target, where the need is going to rise to $300 to $365 billion annually. So just imagine the difference. Now, it also highlights that at COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, the developing countries were demanding $1.3 trillion and annually by 2035, which was in line with the demand. At least they are asking a figure which is reasonable if we believe this report. $1.3 trillion annually by 2025, they are asking. Developed country agreed to 300 billion, which is, again, they are not going to give, because in COP, in the Paris Agreement, they agreed on $100 billion, which is not coming anyways, because you have seen 26 and $23 billion figure. So we have not achieved 100 billion. We are demanding 1.3 trillion and they are agreeing on 300 billion. So we can decide on this, that whether we are going to achieve this or not. Another important thing that this report has highlighted, that 70% of this international fund, they come as a debt instrument. So they are not funding or they are not grants, they are debt. Though they are at a concessional rate, but still 70% of them are debt instrument. So what is, apart from these figures which you can enrich, with which you can enrich your answers, the important thing for prelim is the report itself. The report is published by United Nations Environment Program and name is Adaptation Gap Report Running on Empty. UNEP report comes every year and this has highlighted all these findings. So that's all for today's session. Stay tuned for more such updates. Thank you.